Micronet was a small Japanese publisher and developer, and they released 6 games for the Sega Genesis and Mega Drive. The immortal John Hancock here with another ranking video. I've done this for several other Sega Genesis companies, and I plan to do many more. And in today's video, we're going to look at the 6 games that Micronet released for the Sega Genesis and Mega Drive. And if you want to see my other ranking videos, the link will be below for those, as well as you can rank these games yourself. The link will be below as well for that. And so I'm having a lot of fun going through the Sega Genesis library and talking about each game and telling you whether or not it's worth going back to play these games, or maybe you're just interested in what a game looks like. I hope this video is helpful. Here we go. First up is Curse. Curse is kind of just an average horizontal shooter for the Sega Mega Drive. It never came here. It was supposed to be actually released by INTV Corporation here in the States, and it just never happened. And I think the reason why is that this game falls short compared to the other shooters on the Sega Genesis library. You know, there's only 5 stages. There is a code that you can put in at this title screen in which you can jump to stage 1 through 4. You can adjust your lives. I think that's cool. The problem is, when this comes down to it, the gameplay is just so-so. The frame rate is also really rough. This doesn't look like it's running at 60 frames a second. It's just jittery. You know, the power-ups are cool. You know, it has some combinations of some other shooters that came out at the time period. I think of R-Type, I think of Whip Rush. I also even think of Psychosis on the TurboGrafx 16. The first 4 stages are so-so. The problem is there's several enemies in each level that can just take you out in one shot. In the 5th stage, you have to start back at the very beginning if you get taken out. Normally, you'll just start a little bit back where you left off, kind of like R-Type, but you know, this is just a C for me. Not a great shooter. Next up is kind of a weird combination of a simple platformer with a basic fighter, and I think it disappoints on both. Heavy Nova is a game that is just a disappointment in my opinion. You know, I first saw that intro screen back in the day. I said, oh man, this is going to be awesome. This is going to be a great robot game. And then I started playing it. Oh my gosh, what a disappointment. Okay, the graphics look great. It's got large sprites. So you're controlling this large mech called a doll. You have one of only 4 you can choose from, and in this 2-player fighting mode. But so you have to do this like training platform level first. You get to a boss, and I just don't think it's great. You know, there's a lot of different moves depending on where you're positioned. I didn't have fun playing this. I don't think it's great. I don't think it's a great fighter. I don't think it's a great platformer. There is an option in the option screen to not play the platform side of things, and then it just becomes a bare bones fighter. I don't think this is a game to revisit, and this is a D. I like what they tried to do. It just wasn't well implemented. Next up is a really unique puzzler, and that's Junction. Now, what I love about Micronet is they got really kind of they definitely have unique box art. And so, you know, the Junction box definitely, when I first looked at it, it almost looks like a review copy. But no, this is actually what the final looks like. It's got pretty cool colors. It's got a weird like face on the cover of the US box art. I really enjoy what Micronet did with some of their box art. It was definitely kind of stood out as definitely a third-party company, and definitely reminded me of a smaller game company. Now, Junction is like some other puzzle games before it. Happy Trails comes to mind. I think of Locomotion. I think of Time Ball on the TurboGrafx 16, another TurboGrafx 16 reference. And what you do is you're sliding around tiles, advancing this ball to get it to the through a stage. Now let's talk about that. What I love about in this game is you can choose which stage you want to play. You get tired of a stage, you can play something else. It has 50 stages. Man, I love that about this game. It's a really solid puzzler if you like puzzle games. Now, back in the day, I probably wouldn't give many puzzle games more time. I typically just gravitated to like Columns or Tetris. But really, Junction is a really good puzzler, and I do recommend going back and checking it out. If you like puzzle games, got above average graphics and sound. This is a solid B for me. Good B. Next up, we're going to talk about an arcade classic, and that's Raiden. Here's the arcade classic. You know, I don't know about you, but I played a lot of Raiden. And Raiden was typically a very popular and common shooter in the early 90s, especially in arcades. And then we got the Genesis port. Now, here's the Genesis cover. Love that. Like, this is definitely a 90s cover, right? And later on, there was a variation, and this one's hard to get. And this is a different cover released by Micronet. Raiden is, I think, close to the arcade. Now, I think it's better than the Super Nintendo version. It has some of the things in the arcade version that were missing from the Super Nintendo release. Now, some people this is kind of split. There's some people that really don't like the Genesis release. I like the Genesis release of this a lot better. I think it's a really solid shooter. I like myself some vertical shooters. Now, some people talk about it being a little bit slower than the arcade. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with a slow vertical shooter. I like the power-ups. I like the enemies. It's challenging. When you die, you do go back. So it's really challenging. This is a challenging shooter, and it is only single player. The Genesis version is single player. Some people would maybe take a grade for that. I still think it's good. Some people kind of complain about kind of the drab graphics. I think the graphics still look great. It has many of the little details that the arcade has. It has a cattle down at the bottom of the fields. It has, the explosions. Now, the sound isn't as good, but that's okay. I still think it's one of the better vertical shooters. It's not an S tier. It's not Musha, but I do think it's good, and I'm going to still give it an A because I think it is a decent port of the arcade game. That's an A. Next up is a pair of real-time strategy games released on the Sega Genesis, and you don't necessarily think of many real-time strategy games, especially for consoles. The game Herzog Zwei is probably the best real-time strategy game released on 16-bit consoles. Oh my goodness, I love that game. This is a very different game, and this is Warrior of Rome, and the first one does not do it for me whatsoever. It's too simplistic. There's not any upgrades for your characters. The scenarios are kind of long and dull. And this is just kind of a bare bones real-time strategy game. The instruction manual's terrible. Use an online guide to play this game. And I just don't like this game. I couldn't get into it. I really tried to wrap myself around this and to give it a chance. These type of real-time strategy games are not my favorite, but I'm still going to give them a grade. The first Warrior Rome, I'm going to give it an F. I don't think it's good at all. I think avoid it. Now, it was followed up. It was followed up with a much better sequel. Now, that is Warrior of Rome 2, and oh my goodness, this is such a better game. I think they knocked it out of the park with this. Lots and lots of options. You can choose different maps. You can choose difficulty. You can choose 1 or 2 player. There is a ton of content in this game. I'm just scratched the surface of it. What I did check out, I think this is a really good real-time strategy game. Tons to do, lots of different options. It definitely kind of reminds me of the old school Windows. You got different windows you can pop open and give commands and do orders. I really like that. So if you're looking for a very meaty real-time strategy game for the Sega Genesis, definitely Warrior of Rome 2. That is an A. That's an A for me. I think you won't be disappointed if you like those types of games. Now, for me, I kind of veer towards the action-oriented games, but that still doesn't mean it's not a bad game. I think it's an A. So what did you think? Have you played any of these games? What are your stories behind playing some of these games? I would love to hear your stories and comment below. And as always, thank you for the ongoing support. I'm having a lot of fun doing these ranking videos. What did you think today? And what was your favorite? Thank you so much. This is the Immortal John Hancock, and you have a good day.